Going into 2025, I have been warning people that there was going to be major changes to the tax law that would impact your money and your portfolio. Turns out that did happen in the last few days. Instead, though, that bill changed way more than I would argue any of us expected. So what was in the big, beautiful bill? What should you know? What should you be concerned about? And everything in between. Let's go ahead and break it down. So I've got pages of notes here, and I'm gonna cover taxes, the Trump accounts, car loans, and everything in between that I found interesting. So I'll try and add like the little markers here, but let's start off with taxes and I'll kind of jump around. All right, so starting off with taxes. Corporate taxes are going to be cut, but if we back up just a bit, let's go back to 2017. That is the first Trump tax cut, and that was called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It did change a whole lot of things. I'm not going to go into all those changes, but the main thing is this. Those tax cuts were temporary. Keyword temporary, and those expired in 2025, which is why we ended up in the position we are today, where both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, had to come together and say, all right, we need to change some stuff. This tax bill essentially made a lot of those changes permanent. That is how we ended up in this particular scenario. The corporate taxes that happened during the 2017 bill are now permanent. That's where we are, okay? The corporations saved a lot of money. They're gonna keep a lot of that money. Now, I can get into a whole rant about that and why I don't think that's necessarily the best thing, but conversation for another day. If you wanna hear that rant, let me know in the comments, all right? But number two, what's gonna happen with individuals? And that is the part that we need to zoom in on. If you are in the top 20%, you are estimated to get $13,000 more per year, which is quite nice. Okay, now if you start to look at that on an annual basis, that is expected to be right around 3% per year. Now, some people would argue 3% ain't all that big, but hey, if you get a 3% raise, that's decent. Okay, it's not 10%, but again, that is a decent number. If you're in the top 0.1%, you're expected to get $290,000 more, keyword, per year as a result of this tax cut. So those two things are quite solid. Quick time out. I know we've been talking a lot about investing today. However, if you don't know where to start or you haven't started yet, I have a free guide on how you can buy your first stock in just 20 minutes. To get that free guide, check out the link right here. All right, back to the video. Now, there's also something called the SALT deduction, and that's the state and local tax deduction. I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds. Essentially, people who are in high tax areas, New York, California, they were able to deduct a portion of the amount that they already paid to the states and cities in some cases against their federal taxes. It was a way for them to save money. They cut that out in 2017. They're now able to add that back, but that part is temporary. I think it's something not enough people are zooming in on. Some pieces of this bill are permanent, and some of these benefits are temporaries, and I'm going to start to call those out as we move forward. So that SALT deduction is temporary. So if you are living in New York, California, other high tax areas where you are going to use this SALT deduction, use it now. Talk to your accountant to figure out how, when, and where, and all the details. Feel free to use it now, but it currently is temporary, and vote accordingly if you feel like that is something you want to continue to use moving forward. Next is something that was also interesting, but is temporary too, and that is the no taxes on tips. Now, interestingly enough, this is something that I did rant about just a few weeks ago, or at least a month or two ago, and up to $25,000 is not going to have a federal income tax. Now, your state is going to depend on what state you're in. Now, at the end of this year, or at least by December 31st, 2025, which yes is the end of the year, but they can do it between now and then. Okay, so that's why I said by the end of the year. But they are going to list all of the jobs that would qualify under that. I was a little skeptical because you could have thrown out CEO and all types of other stuff. Now that it's law and we can't do anything about it. So whatever, right? But in either case, the first $25,000 can now be tax-free from a federal level, as I mentioned earlier. There's now a deduction for overtime for $12,500. And those will be set to expire in 2028. Now, why are these set to expire in 2028? There's a presidential election in 2028. So somebody is going to have some pressure to keep these tax cuts in play. Now, these tax cuts did increase the debt by an extreme amount. I think it was anywhere between 2.8 to about $3 trillion. I'll put the number somewhere on the screen. So the next person who's going to be in charge is going to have to face the country and say, yeah, I'm going to continue to keep this debt in place, or I'm going to let these expire, or do something, right? Make somebody pay some money to help clean up the debt situation. So that's a hard and unenviable position for someone to be in by 2028. So that is wild, especially the fact that corporate taxes, there is no deadline there, but for the regular people, there is. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, so moving on to something that's a bit more fun is the quote-unquote Trump accounts. And these are for kids who are born between 2025 and 2028. You get a one-time gift, if you will, by opening the account of $1,000. The parents are able to add up to, or a max of, $5,000. That's a total of $6,000. And your employer is able to add up to $2,500. So that is 5, 6, 8.5, yes, 8.5, $8.5 thousand total, and that's if your employer even signs up to add money to it. I'm not sure how popular these will be, because again, it is set to expire in 2028. Now, this is something I would expect a future presidential candidate to absolutely be on board for, and I would advocate for it as well. This money is going to be invested in what I would assume to be a broad, diversified portfolio in index funds, and it is going to be tax advantage, meaning it's going to grow, you're not going to pay taxes on it, and when you withdraw it, you can withdraw it for certain expenses, which they will list on the site when and if it launches at some point in time. It's law, so it has to launch. But they'll list all that kind of stuff. And I think it is a good vehicle. It is something that's another tool that you can use. There are some that say the 529 plan, which is the current college savings plan, which you can use for other things, has a much higher limit, which is true. It is well over $10,000. The limit does change every now and then. If your child has a earned income, they can open a Roth IRA, which I would argue has even more benefits than the current Trump account. That is something that you could use as well, or you can even do a joint or custodial account. Joint meaning me and my child own this account. I have no income limits on that if we do the joint option. All are good, right? I like to have a bunch of options. I will say the advantage of the Trump account right now is if my employer wants to put $2,500 in there, free money, and if the government wants to give me $1,000, that's $3,500 if nothing else of free money. I've seen some estimates as well. If you are investing based on what you put in, what the S&P 500 has done over the last X amount of years, 18 years at 7%, you could end up with like $70,000. I'll take it. Okay, I'll take it. So not the greatest thing in the world, not life-changing money, but $70,000 at 18, 19, or 20 is better than what I had. So there's that. There are the cuts to Medicaid. While I will not go on an entire, Medicaid point-by-point detail, because that is not my expertise, I will say that I do want you to pay attention to what you are paying for your current insurance, especially if you have private insurance. The reason why I say that is because there is going to be, I would estimate, some sort of supply and demand issue here. For example, the hospitals that are currently out there, let's say there are 4 hospitals and one of them has 50% of people using Medicaid, and a lot of people do get kicked off, their hospital closes. It's going to be a supply and demand. Either that hospital, again, closes and people still sick, they got to go somewhere, then you're going to have an overflow of people at the other 3 hospitals, and they're going to need to do something. Prices are going to have to rise, because again, you have more people than you do, hospitals. So you have more demand than you have supply. We saw what happened in the pandemic and in 2021. We saw inflation, right? We had far too many goods. We had too much money, rather, chasing too few goods. That's you know, the hospital is the goods, right? And the too much money is, or too much demand rather, is the too many sick people. That's number one. Or on the opposite side of things, you can have all these hospitals open, but because they're not making the money, because people can't pay, because they don't have Medicaid, then you have what? You have these hospitals trying to charge more money from the people who already currently pay, and those are the ones who currently pay privately. So if I'm paying $400, I have to pay $5 now because I'm covering for someone who can't pay anymore. Because I'm currently paying more because the hospital doesn't get the income that they were getting. So pay attention to that shift and see if that is going to be something that you now have to change in your own budget. It's something that's indirect. It's an indirect cost, but it might be something that is going to shift the economy in some ways. If you are a senior, you may be eligible for a senior bonus. Senior meaning 65 or older. You may be eligible for a $6,000 deduction based on your income. Now, there are some ins and outs, and especially some Social Security qualification there. So speak to your accountant based on all of that. It can be a little opaque, a little complex there. So definitely refer to your accountant on what the rules are and how much you qualify for, because again, it depends. That's why I say may, right? It could be the full 6,000 or it could be some scale down. So read into the details, talk to your accountant and see where you may fall on that scale once you hit 65 and as you go up that ladder in that space. Then you have one that is quite interesting, and that is the car loan interest. You can now deduct a portion of the interest that you use to buy a new car. The car needs to be American assembled. Okay, they didn't say American made, they said American assembled. Now, the thing here is similar to the way you used to buy a house. You get to write off the interest there. You used to be able to write off interest from your student loans, at least a portion of it. For a car, though, it's not really intended for us as individuals, and that's because in year one, you may save up to $500. Now, the average car today is pretty expensive. So we're talking about $65,000, $70,000, $80,000, and you're only saving $500. That's just year one. That money is going to consistently drop as you continuously pay off that loan. I will tell you this though, it is more beneficial if you own a business. And what I mean by that is you have a fleet of cars and you have a major loan. That is truly what this type of incentive was built for, not for individuals. Despite that, I'm gonna call it now. If it's not already there, there's gonna be some TikTok telling you to buy some G-Wagon, take a loan out, do all this crazy stuff. It's gonna happen. I'm telling you, it really isn't built for that purpose. Can you use it for that and get your little $2 deduction? Sure, but you're still gonna be $80,000 in debt. So just throwing it out there, not necessarily the brightest thing to do. What I would suggest though, for all of these little quirks and all these new things, is this. Do seek out a good quality accountant if you are looking to take advantage of all of the things in this bill, especially from a tax perspective, because it is new and you want the best quality person. And that's beyond, right, H&R Block or whatever service that people are using. I prefer to work with somebody who has an EA that is one of the higher designations, or a CPA or a CFP, right? Certified Financial Planner, Enrolled Agent, or Certified Public Accountant. And make sure they get me all my monies, right? So do that if you absolutely need to, and ask as many questions as you need to make sure you're getting every single benefit, and more importantly, ask questions, right? Somebody say, hey, look, I saw this thing on TikTok. I need to know, does this work for me? Does it apply to my situation? Yes or no? And then you can tell them, and then they can help you not go to jail, right? And then make sure that you're getting, again, every single dollar possible. And once you have saved all of those dollars, you can invest them. And if you need to know what to invest in, you can check out this video right here.